Okay, there we go. We got it.
Okay.
Okay. So, sorry we're late, guys. We were having some password resets for anybody that's tuned in. So I'd like to call to order the Planning Commission meeting, December 21st, 2023. Roll call vote, please. Roll call, rather.
Commissioner Light,
Present.
Commissioner Boswell,
Present.
Commissioner Craig,
Present.
Commissioner Gaddis,
Here.
Commissioner Lamb,
Here.
Chair Hazeltine,
Here.
Commissioner Conroy is absent. Thank you.
Right. Okay, let's go ahead and do the salute to the flag. I'll start us. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, great. Do we have a motion to approve the order of the agenda?
Motion to approve the order agenda?
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we didn't have any blue folders items, so we'll go ahead and skip that. The consent calendar, the business items, except those formally noticed for public hearing or those pulled for discussion, are assigned the consent calendar. The commission members may request that any consent calendar items be removed, discussed, or acted upon separately. Items removed for the consent calendar will be taken up under the excluded consent calendar section below. Those items remaining on the consent calendar will be approved in one motion. The chair will call upon anybody wishing to address the commission on any consent calendar items on the agenda, which has not been pulled by the commission for discussion. Each speaker will be permitted to speak only once, and comments will be limited to a total of 3 minutes. Basically, it's just secretary stuff. It's not that we're going to do in one motion. So do we have a motion to approve the
I'll
calendar?
make a motion to approve.
I second.
Okay, and F3, actually, before we vote on that, 2 of the members that are up here weren't at the July 20th meeting. So Commissioner Light and Commissioner Craig weren't at the July 2nd, so they'll be, what's the word I used?
Abstaining.
Abstain or
Abstain.
recuse?
They'll abstain from F3 in that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody against?
Wait a minute.
You're approving the minutes.
Oh, okay. Aye.
Aye. Yeah, we're just approving the
I thought it
Minutes,
was
right.
something to do with my fellow commissioner over here. That might
Okay.
have-
Do we have anybody that
negative
would like to, this is the public participation on non-agenda items. This section is intended to provide members of the public with the opportunity to comment on any subject that does not appear on this agenda for action. This section is limited to 30 minutes. Each speaker will be afforded 3 minutes to address the commission. Each speaker will be permitted to speak only once. Written requests, if any, will be considered first under this section. Do we have anybody that wanted to speak on non-agenda? Anybody online?
Yes, no, for the record, there was no attendees and no e-comments for consent calendar.
Okay, thank
calendar,
you.
And as well as for non-agenda, there's no e-comments and no attendees.
Thank you. Thank you for
you.
clarifying that. Okay, so we are going to move right on then to L1, which is a discussion item confirming and prioritizing the Planning Commission's list of referral to staff that will be forwarded to the City Council as part of the city's 2024 Strategic Planning Initiative. Acting Community Director, Mr. Scully, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just a few opening comments.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair, members of the Planning Commission. Sean Scully, Acting Community Development Director. And this is our third meeting on this topic, and it's an important topic. The referrals to staff, I think, as we discovered, a little bit of an incorrect expectation, the way it was laid out. We had a lot of stale items on that, and it was simply, we we didn't have authorization from council to work on them because they did involve, some work. So we've reset, we've created that procedure whereas we go through the business of the planning commission and a member of the planning commission starts to sense there's some issue that is recurring that you want to address that's come up in the as you do your duties, and then you get consensus from the rest of the commission, then it would be brought as a referral to staff that we would then, this department, the community development department, would place on their list that would then go to the city council strategic planning meeting. So that's our procedure that we've, at our last meeting that we confirmed. And then as a result of the work we did, the commission decided this would be a good meeting to revisit the referrals to staff list. And then if there is some item or two that might be removed from that list or new items put on the list, this is the opportunity to do that. I will say in the first meeting 2 meetings ago, where I walked you through all the items that the community development department, already has on our list from the council, and what I know is coming to this group next year. There's going to be a lot of work to do for the planning commission with the general plan update coming to you, inclusionary housing, the zoning consistency effort. And I think that's where a lot of work is going to get done, as we just had a preliminary meeting, or our first meeting, initial meeting with the consultant. Now that have a rough draft of our new general plan, land use and open space and conservation goals and policies and noise and safety, we're now having to look closely at the zoning ordinance and say, where are these policies inconsistent with what we have? And we're going through and creating quite a list of issues that conflict and that will be coming to this body to review. And there's quite a domino effect. Once you touch one zoning regulation, quite often it will turn into many more that you've got to amend in order to make it internally consistent. So just wanted to kind of caveat your discussions here that there's going to be a lot of work to do. But again, we'll take what you come up with and we'll get it to the council and we'll see if they want to move forward to it with it. And that's it.
Okay.
And I can jump on the computer and pull up, the referral list if we want to do that.
I think we have it. If
You've got it?
everybody
Okay.
wants
There are
to.
only 4 items, right?
Yeah.
There's not a lot
It's
there.
in the agenda on page 8, if anybody wants to pull that up. Does anybody want to start the discussion? Sheila?
Yes.
Okay.
Certainly.
Do it.
Happy to start the discussion. So I think that there, just for clarity, Planning Director Scully mentioned one question, and that is, are we going to keep what's on here, or are we going to discard what's on here? So that seems to be the first decision that has to be made. Am I correct with my colleagues here? Am I correct that this is?
Yeah, I think so. We start
so.
with the list that we have. I think this is maybe a little bit different of a list than what we're going forward. Not different, but now we have something that's going to be presented to City Council. So this was more of, I don't know, a list that didn't go anywhere. So now we have actually an action plan. So yeah, let's start with that.
So the question would be, right, is there anything on this list that meets the current criteria?
To go to March, to present to the City Council.
For the strategic plan,
Right,
right?
Right.
Is there anything on this list? I would say the criteria would be anything on the list that would be relevant to go to the City Council and the strategic plan. 2, is there anything on this list that could be potentially addressed in some of those, when we discuss the general plan, when we discuss zoning, et cetera?
Okay, I have an idea. Number one, discussion on commercial and mixed-use open space. Okay, Matthew put that on there, I believe. And how about if we were to change that? I keep hearing the city council talk about the design guidelines coming back to us next year. How about, because that actually is in, open space is in the design guidelines, why don't we change that to that? Does everybody, so the design guidelines we worked on for a few years here, a couple of years, and it went to city council and they marked a lot of the stuff off that we had put in there. So they're talking, the city council keeps bringing up, and Commissioner Obagi told me that he actually wants it to come back to us to discuss some of the stuff. None of the stuff on the, that would affect the square footage of what people can build on the lot, because we don't have any control over that. But there was a lot of other stuff on there that kind of got ixnayed along with that, and Zane wanted Councilman Obagi wanted it to come back. So I think, is everybody okay with maybe just changing that one?
So just to clarify, number one,
Well, yeah, because it would be included in the design guidelines. So how about if we just say, bring the design guidelines appropriate, back to the planning commission? And I wouldn't say that had I not heard that that's what they wanted to do in the city council meetings.
right.
Are you okay with
Didn't they
that,
specifically
Rob?
vote not to
I mean,
do that?
Commissioner. Got us.
Commissioner Rob, I'm trying to get my brain around what it is exactly. I mean, I can see what Matthew is after. I guess the idea is, it's a question of what do we have in place for open space requirements for commercial properties and projects, and also mixed-use projects. And apparently he had some objection to either the lack, to what's currently the required set of requirements, or if they're I think that, and I now I'm starting to remember that we had some really strange things going on in that realm.
Yeah, with
that technically fit the requirements, but really didn't achieve the goals.
I remember an example he gave was an apartment building that had two balconies facing each other, like literally you could almost shake the person's hand in the other place. And then underneath those balconies on the first floor were a driveway, and that was being considered open space. So that was part of his problem. So, but the problem is Sheila may have a better idea about what he was thinking, because
No, I think you hit it.
okay. So, but the problem is that's really, really specific, and it is covered in the design guidelines. So,
Residential,
what?
because that's a
Residential.
residential that you're talking about.
Not commercial.
This is different. This is
Well, it's just
commercial.
mixed use open space. Let's just take the word commercial out then.
Well, no, the point of when he came up with it, he was talking about commercial and commercial as being part of a mixed-use project too.
So.
Do you remember, Director Scully?
Yeah, I do. I know that it had to do, I think, with we do have a open space requirement in our mixed use zone.
Right.
Where there's a certain percentage, I want to say it's a 10% of your FAR has to be open space. And then there is, and I was going to pull up the section, then there's parameters on what qualifies. And it has to be a minimum 10 feet wide and accessible to the public. And, I'm not sure if he was looking to, drill down on what some of those parameters were that were included in the in the qualifications for mixed-use open space, or what is, I don't recall getting into what his concern was, maybe other than getting possibly more, or
I think just making, so then
Define
the option to that is to split it into two. So what we would do, we would say agendized discussion on commercial open space, and then the next one on the open space for mixed use goes into the design guidelines. So is anybody interested in saying that as a group, we're interested in revisiting the design guidelines? Who's interested in that? I'm interested.
Okay, so I do have a question on this, and that is, in terms of criteria, would, Mr. Scully, where might the open space issue be addressed in some of the work that we're going to do in January in 2024? I think that's the question that's important to answer. If there's for example, the open space, I have forgotten, but the open space element, I can't recall whether mixed-use open space is addressed in that document.
Yeah, it's a real overhaul of our open space, conservation, parks and recreation element. Forgive me, the one that jumps out at me that's a revelation, I think, that came from you, Sheila. It had to do with public view sheds, which is a whole nother tangent, but there is a lot, the policies are really, they really do address kind of the urban, private, usable public open space. There are policies because we're built out community. Of course, the primary is to get more parkland. Try to get, our goal with open spaces and parks is to obtain a higher ratio of parks to population. If we can get over the 3 acres per population number, then that changes how we acquire funding for parks in the future. We can acquire additional monies because our generation rate, then we can go to a 5 acre per 1,000 population ratio, and so that's a primary goal, increase the amount of parkland that we have for a lot of reasons. But then we break it down into the reality of Redondo Beach, which is, we're kind of, let's be creative with trying to create open space. Let's look at our commercial and mixed use projects and try to create public spaces that, they're not traditional parks by any stretch, and they don't count towards, the ratio, but they're creating these public open spaces. And so there's, and that's squarely at, and it's born in our mixed use, usable public open space standard. And we're looking to see where we can, and we applied it in the ACAP in commercial projects of a certain size, which is a next step.
So when the element comes to us, the open space, parks and recreation
Right.
element comes to us, I think one of the things I'm hearing you say is that the commercial, which already addresses to some extent commercial open space, I think I remember that conversation.
Yes.
Right? And I know that's something that Jim Light was very strong about. So I'm wondering when we have the opportunity that we could either scrutinize some of the what do they call the tasks or
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And add one of these. We will have the power to do that. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, I could say that issue, that discussion about commercial and mixed use open space is going to be happening when you see the new general plan land use element in parks.
Okay.
an open space element. So it's kind of covered.
Do
It's,
we leave it on there, guys, or do we, okay, first off, we need to change the topic, the title of this. It's the Planning Commission referral to staff to be presented to the city council at the strategic plan meeting. Okay, so it's not just a rewrite to update. Is that proper, that title?
Well, maybe make it more of,
It needs to go to the city council, what we say.
So addressing these four, you could say status on the right? You could say, will be included in the land use element.
There we go.
yeah.
Okay,
If it will, and then we'll make sure it is,
And
you know
then
what I
we'll
mean?
make sure.
Yeah.
okay, let's change that.
And what's
then.
funny about this is in the course of this discussion, we're ending up discussing it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, which we gotta kind of be careful. Actually, we gotta be a little careful about that. I'm sorry. Because it's not.
Yeah, because we're discussing. But
Yeah.
the comment here I have a problem with is will occur after discussion of residential outdoor living space, which was discussed again due to appointment. This is like 2.5 years old.
Right.
That
So
needs
that's
to
gotta
be-
go.
And it didn't happen.
And it didn't happen. It's still pending.
Right.
Its status is accurate.
So, okay, guys, so do we just start over again with, we can just get rid of this and then add what we want into a new list, right? So how do we?
You can
Comments?
you can tie it up, right? You can sort of close the book on it by changing the comment or amending the comment and saying it will be covered, right? You could say, in the comment section, you could say, Planning Commission discussed that this item will be included in the land use element discussion when it comes to the Planning Commission. And then the status will be, again, included in our in our discussion of the land use element.
But I
Okay,
would suggest not eliminating it because you can see
It's-
it didn't occur as it was intended to occur.
it's not going to be eliminated, it's going to be added,
Amended.
amended, and it's going to be amended and included on the list.
And it will, and the status will tell anyone who reads it, the status will show what the Planning Commission decided.
Right,
Right.
okay, got it. So
Got
let's
it.
move on to number 2 then. Does that make sense, John?
Yes, yeah, I've got it.
Okay,
I've got mine.
agendize a discussion on requirements for bike racks. Now, that was in your list, Sean, the bike rack that you presented to us, I believe.
Staff will attend this discussion after residents. Yeah.
On the list, you showed us a few.
Oh, yeah, on the
meetings
city
ago.
council's
Yeah.
list. Yeah, sure. And it'll get, I'm fairly certain will be, whatever there'll be zoning inconsistencies, with the general plan that we have to update. And we'll be looking at the list that council has directed us to already, pursue and rolling in amendments to many of those items. And I know bike racks is kind of high on the list.
Okay, so then
so that would-
comment section also then has to be amended to say, it's already included on the street.
Will be
Yeah.
addressed.
Yeah.
Planning Commission discussed and decided, right?
Yeah. Is that something that's important to everybody to have the requirement for bike racks?
Yes, to me.
And then the bike racks, so that's obviously for commercial properties,
It's what kind of property?
commercial property.
Yeah.
So
It-
can
it
we-
is.
I think
it says
actually, it doesn't say that.
Well, do we need to change that? That's what the point is.
Not even
why?
residential.
It could
Why
go,
not all properties?
Right,
Needs to
citywide.
have bike,
Parks and
yeah.
commercial and residential and mixed
Residential.
use and
a lot of applications.
bike racks,
institutional.
bike racks.
Even the library has a bike rack, doesn't it?
No, okay, so
Uh-huh.
let's, okay,
I
but
hope
bike
so.
rack, you're gonna require people put a bike rack outside their house?
I think that's a good idea.
At especially a multi-unit place.
Yeah.
sure.
Oh, okay, so why don't we say that? Commercial, parks, And
Anyone that converts a
and
garage to an
multi
ADU.
high density
Why not just say
apartments,
residential and then we'll figure it out during the discussion?
excluding, okay.
We're not saying it's a mandatory they have background, we're just saying we're gonna look at
Discuss it.
what.
It's a discussion.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not mandating bike racks yet.
We're not supposed to discuss it here, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay, everybody's cool with the bike racks, yay?
Yay.
Yay, yay.
I can't believe we haven't done that. It's like, how hard
I
is this?
know.
How hard would it
That's
have been
what's so
to do
annoying.
that?
Well,
about
it's
this.
it's being
It only
presented.
took us 3 meetings to
It's
do
gonna
it.
go there.
Let's see, September 16th, 2021. Oh,
Okay,
well,
number 3.
we were all suffering from the pandemic.
Okay, I take responsibility for number 3 and number 4, and that is that, and you know, the city attorney.
I remember
This
that.
is an issue,
First
you know,
day.
that there are no formal guidelines for doing ex parte communications with applicants, and that can get us into a world of trouble. And frankly, you know, in my view and the view of a lot of people who have sort of thought about this a lot, nothing good can occur from a non-public discussion with an applicant on an agenda item, because everything that is said in that, any information an applicant would convey, you want it to be public. That's part of being a public serving commission, is that all that information is in the public. There shouldn't be anything that's, you know, being discussed and agreed upon or information transferred that is not public, that's part of the quasi judicial process. And so, so personally, you know, I'm against it, but I'd like to hear somebody who of the, you know, who is an expert at it to sort of walk through, okay, why should or shouldn't this happen?
Commissioner
Right.
Lamb?
And it sounds to me like that you're sort of aiming at a policy that you'd like to see the city have a policy about.
Not really. It's more of, okay, a discussion from an expert who's seen litigation result from all these things, to really lay it out and say, okay, yeah, sure, you can talk with the applicant on it, but here are all the multitude of ways that we're going to get into trouble, and you're going to get in trouble, and you know, if you do, it's more of a cautionary. I don't want it to be a policy. You cannot talk with an applicant. I'm not after that. What I'm after is that we all understand what could go wrong and how it's gone wrong and all the different problems that have occurred. I don't have that database, you know, and I've heard anecdotally here and there, but there are experts, in fact, that we have on staff here who can come in and talk with us for a half hour saying, here are all the things that could go wrong if you have an ex parte conversation on this.
We all quit.
Right.
Well, the other issue is too, is, you know, if you're having singular conversations, how are you going to document what you said or didn't say?
Right.
And that could be an issue later. There's a issue happening in the city of Yucaipa right now where developers were talking directly with current council members, and they had a closed session meeting and ended up on the recommendation of, well, I gotta be careful how I say this, just to say that there was a lot of that happening and a big lawsuit right now. And so in the, you know, and basically in any other business venture I've been in, maybe you might, again, I'm not an expert, so we may have to have whoever's going to advise us, maybe you have a group of, like, your Brown Act person with you at the time, so you have an additional witness
Right.
if you have to do that. But I don't know, you're right.
We originally approached, I understand, we approached Mike Webb to come in and talk with us about it. And I'd like a half hour of his time here where he can explain, and maybe this is a periodic thing as we go through different waves of commissioners through, you know, and the normal rotation, that there is a conversation, okay, you know, you can do this, and you will be approached. You know, they will come to you, they will call you.
Commissioner Gaddis?
Yes.
You want the city council to know that we want in the strategic plan to have the attorney talk to us.
No, I
That's
did
what
a
this
referral to
list-
staff saying, can you have the city attorney come in and talk to us? Now, some sort of overlay of, well, you got to go to the council. Well,
Okay, so
I'm
now we need,
perfectly delighted for that to go to council and say, hey, they would like the city attorney to come in and talk with them about ex parte conversation.
okay, so I think what would be proper then is that, go ahead, Commissioner Lamb.
Comment?
Yes.
Is, as a substitute for taking planning commission time away from its general business. Now, in the last two meetings, we probably could have accommodated a conversation, right?
Discussion.
Right. But as a substitution for taking planning commission time for this, I'm wondering if you would be agreeable to having him either refer us on his recommendation or some writing of his, as opposed to a 30-minute discussion. Would that be sufficient for you?
Not really, because I think, again, I'd like it to be in an open public forum.
Yes.
Right. And I think if there was a presentation done, he would also have a written up outline too, I would
Right.
assume, not a PowerPoint.
Okay, so that's
Thank
fine.
you.
But we now have two different kinds of lists, so I'm good. Let's keep that on. Referral to staff, we can keep the coastal commission education thing, referral to staff. Those are fine, but now those are two different lists we have in front of us, okay? So now we're trying to get a list together of a few things that we want to give to city council to work on the strategic plan. So these two top ones need to come off, okay? And they need to go on this new list that we're creating that's going to go to city council. So obviously 3 and 4 does not meet the criteria. They don't care anything about us wanting to talk to the city attorney or the coastal commission. So can we please just get
How do you
organized?
know that?
You want to leave this on there?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
And you want city council to hear?
Yeah, that we would like to, I think they could probably use the same conversation at city council,
We could do a group meeting.
frankly.
Yeah, can we have a vote then
We get the seats.
to,
We get the
do
chairs.
we,
They sit.
okay, here's what we're going to vote on, you guys. Do we create two separate lists? One list is what we want to be presented to the city council in March.
Before you get to that?
Can you hold on 1 second?
Okay.
It's going to be a list that we're going to present. It's going to be maybe 4 or 5 items that we all think is important. Sean will present it to Acting Director Scully will present it to City Council in March. And then and then in addition, we have another list, which is for Mr. Scully to work on getting the city attorney here and a coastal commission person here.
But he can't do that.
Yeah, he hasn't been able to do that.
No,
That's
I
the
know,
point of
but
going
that-
to the council.
Yeah, that was going to be my question here, is this has been here, supposedly something was going to happen, and it's been pending for 2 to 3 years for all of them. So unless it's something that goes to the city council, I think you recommended that.
Apparently it's not
It
gonna
ain't going to
happen.
happen for
Right.
this council. We don't have the power to do that. City
We've
council
had,
does.
and we've discussed this with the city attorney's office, and they have, they've got a list that makes my list look pretty small. If you can only imagine. So, but if directed by council,
Okay.
and he'll probably.
Okay, let's leave those on there then. Okay. Number 5, yes,
We voting
Sheila.
on these?
Yeah, let's vote on
I
this.
only see
Okay.
4.
Good.
Is there-
Okay, let's,
Okay.
We're going to do the coastal commission one?
okay, does everybody, let's vote on who wants to keep number 1 with the changes that we've made in the
Say
Yes,
aye or no.
Aye.
Aye, any noes?
Aye.
No, okay. Number 2 is the bike racks. Aye or no? Aye?
Aye.
Okay. Send to city council the request to have the city attorney talk with us. Aye or no?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
No. Okay, so that was a 4 to 2? 4 to 2. Okay, so that goes on there. And then the next one, the same thing. Who wants a
Well,
coastal?
wait, let's have a discussion. Let me just tell you what this is all about. We haven't really discussed this last one. So I too added this, and that's because we have in the past and we will in the future have projects come up that have coastal act that touch the Coastal Act, that the Coastal Act has additional bearing upon, what is allowed, what isn't allowed. And we found ourselves, frankly, not having enough background on what to look for so that we can at least say, hey, wait a minute, this touches the Coastal Act in a way that we should be very conscious of. And it's just somebody coming in, a Frank Angel or somebody, I would even say Jim Light probably has enough background to alert us to something like this. And he did write the Harbor, what is the formal
King
title?
Harbor Care Act.
King Harbor Care Act, which was passed by the Coastal Commission. So I would say he's an expert if he can, write something like that. But to give us an alert of, okay, here are the things you need to look for when projects come in that are in the coastal zone to see if this is running, is going to bump up somehow against the Coastal Act. It's just an explainer that for us, I'm not talking about anything other than a half an hour,
Okay, any
come in,
comments?
expert come in and talk to us.
Any comments on that?
I do have two comments.
Go ahead.
One is that this time around, we'll have legal representation with us, which we did not have before. And second of all, I think that there's copious information and private conversations and discussions that could be had outside the Planning Commission that would provide adequate information to individual council members.
Commissioners, you mean?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Individual commissioners.
And the reason I put it on here was, even though I can gather all that information on my own, I'd rather have it be a public forum thing where we can point at it and say, well, here's what the experts say.
Yeah, and I'd like to have a focused presentation on what's relevant to us and the work that we do, as opposed to something broader that, again, takes up time we don't have.
Agreed.
Okay, let's vote on that. Aye. Who wants to go ahead and keep that on the list?
Aye.
And noes?
No?
And the reason I'm saying no is because I do think that, our meetings adding that particular discussion when the information is out there is just time taking away from the Planning Commission, but that's okay. Okay, so now we're going to go on to what we talked about, which is to add some other things that we think we would like the city council to know that this particular Planning Commission has these interests, and make sure that in the strategic plan come March that that that's some interests that we have. So does anybody have a suggestion to start? Commissioner Lamb, do you have
I
something?
do, but I would like to defer to
Anybody else?
others who
Commissioner
have
Light?
ideas.
Anything, an
I
idea that
would
you
like
might
to
have come up
defer
with?
to the expert at the end of the aisle.
Anybody? Commissioner?
Go ahead.
I have nothing prepared.
No, every meeting, we have a referrals to staff portion, and I've never been shy about throwing in a referral to staff. So everything that comes
This
up,
is-
I've always thrown it in. I said, okay, yeah, I'd like something to happen on such and such. So I didn't have to wait until today's meeting to bring up a referral to staff, and I hope
Well, this is a
everybody
little bit
else is.
different.
Okay.
Commissioner Gaddis, this is slightly different, and the conversation that we had at the last meeting was that we've got the strategic plan coming in front of city council. So as a group, are there certain things that we find important? Okay, that's the point of tonight's meeting.
Okay.
It's not just to keep referring to Sean that nothing gets, and then we just keep it moving from month to month.
Yeah, we've
That
only
is
had 4
satisfying.
over the last 3 years. It's
No,
not
but
like
the point is, this list is going somewhere.
Hey.
I'll believe it when I see it.
I see. So we're not on the same page on what it is we're doing tonight,
Okay.
I guess. Is that the idea?
Well,
No,
Commissioner Gaddis?
if you have more things to add that you'd like to be taken to council, right?
Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
idea.
By all means, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Lamb.
So I have three, actually. And two of them are, I would say, a collaboration between myself and Jim Light. So the first one is historic buildings and how we preserve them. And we'd like, so one of the issues right now is that historic buildings are, because of our current ordinances, broad and also vague, many of our historic buildings are not being preserved. And there's a concern about that, a concern that our our history, the history of our buildings and the history of our city will subsume to modern and financial interests in development, in land development as we move forward. In other words, that the financial interests of development will supersede the interests of the community to preserve our history through buildings. And that's a big concern. And the reason that happens is because of the preservation ordinance is not strong enough. Okay, it may be adequate, but it's not strong enough to preserve our historic landmarks and our historic buildings, actually. So two examples of that are South Broadway, which was an undisturbed historical home that needed some maintenance, but the landowner wanted to develop the property. And our preservation ordinance wasn't strong enough to prevent that. Another one, sort of the opposite, but comparative, is the Catalina Village, where there were some buildings there that were very vague in terms of their historic, I don't know if vague is the right word, but their historic significance could have come into question, and yet because it suited the developer, those buildings were preserved. So.
Excuse me, Sheila, are you talking about the Catalina project?
Yes.
Those buildings weren't preserved. There was only two things that were preserved, a pulley and a cornerstone, which you would never have seen.
Right.
That's the point. Those facades were changing. I'm sure most of the building, those two things were the only things. So,
But right, I would just add.
Clarify.
No, it's not that I disagree with
yeah,
you.
clarify a little bit there.
Right. They became a historic district.
Yes. And even
Right.
though they weren't going to look anything like the original buildings from over 100 years ago.
How do we strengthen, our preservation ordinance so there's more consistency?
Right.
So that's the point. And in addition, here are some ways to do that. Hire a consultant, survey other cities that have preserved historical homes and businesses. Eureka, I think, is one. Decide what a solid standard would be that other cities have used. Model a new one after what other cities who clearly have preserved their buildings, right? How did they do that, right? And then design or define the ordinance based on what a new standard would be. So that would be the recommendation.
If I may, actually, we have a budget for a historic resource survey citywide. So this is already going to be happening. And you might recall Commissioner Gaddis and Lamb, we have a whole series now of historic preservation policies in the land use element that we've never had. And one of the implementation measures is a historic resources survey and updating the ordinance. So you're going to be looking at that policy and you can make additions to that, as part of your review. So it's definitely already on the list because it's in the draft land use element. And I'm not trying to, keep you from putting stuff on the list. I'm just saying, there's actually budget for the survey.
Okay, so let me ask you this question then, and that is, by having the planning commission request this with these certain suggestions, right? Would this assist in making this a priority?
It doesn't hurt to have it on the list for sure. And then there'd probably be, we would, council might press in and I don't know what kind of report goes with what we put on the list. But they'll be aware of the dollars budgeted for it. And maybe, and they will be aware of the land use policies that are going to be coming before you and them. If it's in the general plan update bucket, it's happening next year. It has to. We don't have a
Right,
choice.
so this would give it some emphasis for priority.
Yeah, and
Important. Commissioner
Yeah,
Dennis?
is there any reason not to have it on the list?
Yeah, no,
Even
not
if
really.
it's something that is
Yeah.
gonna come up? I think there's a certain utility to having it on the list. And then
Enforcing it.
as it approaches, we're all like
Okay.
real conscious, okay, we're gonna nail this one. And
Yeah.
we're gonna have it off the list because we're about
Okay.
to do it. Why not?
Yeah,
Is really my
yeah,
question,
I agree.
right?
So
I hear you.
let's go ahead. Does anyone want to make a comment on that before we vote? Yes.
Yeah, I'm actually glad you clarified it because the first go around, I was thinking we already had these properties identified through our historical commission. And for example, my sister-in-law actually had a house where that was on the list. And ironically, the house that they were concerned about was actually moved from Englewood. It wasn't even built in Redondo Beach. And as a result, they couldn't do anything with the house because they said, it met, I forgot the grading scale they did on it. They had to go through a whole process and finally, because we were selling the property, and they went through and said, oh wait, this house isn't even from Redondo. It was moved from Englewood back in the 50s. So it was kind of an odd thing, but I thought that we already had, again, I'm glad
guess
you
it doesn't-
clarified it, because I always thought that the historic, because I watched one of the last historical meeting or preservation meetings, and there was a property that they added onto a list at one of those meetings, so I didn't know if there's an active process already in play, but from what you're saying is that it hasn't gone far enough.
It needs more teeth.
And I'm glad you clarified that, and Mr. Scully as well.
Trying to move this. He has
take a vote
people,
on it.
he has people from
I'm not
out
trying to
of
rush it on,
town.
but we should vote on this if there aren't any
Okay,
other,
so does any other comments? We'll vote on this. Do people want to include this, yay or nay? A yay?
Aye.
Rather? Aye.
Unanimous.
Yeah, unanimous. Okay, so Sheila, do you need to write do you have any recommendations on comments or anything like that, or how you'd fill that chart in?
That's a great question.
Thank you.
Let me think about that.
I think you could probably take it right out of your notes. Referral topic would be add some teeth. No, you said it didn't have
Right.
enough. Jim Light told you that it didn't.
He gave me some examples. So first of all, the current, so we're really talking about justification, and the current preservation standard is
not adequate to
Or maybe-
keep historic homes
Maybe
from being.
update and strengthen
Yeah.
existing preservation ordinance and historic preservation requirements.
There we go.
That's
Beautiful.
the referral
Beautifully
topic.
Yeah.
Beautifully said.
Okay, good. And then the
Cut
other, the comments
somebody
are,
trying to fast
you know,
track
going
this
to
meeting?
strategic plan, city council, and that status is on the list.
Okay, so the three suggestions on, should that be included? And that would, both this group and Acting Director Scully. Those would be to consult with a professional or hire a consultant, review, survey other cities that have preserved historical buildings, develop a new standard based on
Best practice.
best practices.
So that could go in the comment section, all three of those, right?
Yeah,
Yes, right.
good. Sounds great. Okay, we decided we want that. And I'll just tell you that this one makes me a little sad because I saw so many buildings coming down in the 60s and 70s in Redondo that basically the character of our city got mowed down. And it does. It really, I'm not kidding you, my heart is just like in my stomach because they were beautiful. Okay, so does anybody have another one? Anybody else? Okay.
You had two more.
I do have two
Commissioner
more. The co-living ordinance, you remember co-living?
Yes.
All right.
What ordinance?
Oh, that's
Co-living, you remember that?
right.
The
Catalina
internet,
project.
Yeah.
internet
Yes.
roommate.
Hotel, basically, hotel.
Yeah.
Especially as related to multifamily.
Yes.
It is pervasive. It's happening now,
We don't have a code.
and we don't have a code.
Can you explain
And some
it,
of
Sheila, for everybody that's
Okay.
new?
So using an app like one would use for Airbnb, now they have these for rentals, for home rentals and multifamily rentals. And this is how it works. You opt in like a Airbnb, you opt in, you put in all your personal information, your credit card, probably your bank, and other associated questions. You become a member. And then you also talk about you list your preferences for housing and co-roommates, your preferences, and in addition to that, there now are homeowners who opt in. So there's a match that is being made. So for example, in my neighborhood, there's a home, 3-bedroom home, 3-bedroom, 1 bath, and they've opted for this model. It doesn't appear to be a problem, but, and they have 3 bedrooms, 3 residents, everyone parks off-street, and it appears to work out well. But I have to say, every 6 months, there's a turnover because depending on the agency, there's you don't have to sign a lease for a year. You could go for six months. I don't know in particular which agency this is, but there's a continual flow, shall we say, a flow. This is really advantageous to the landlord because he's, or the homeowner, because he no longer has to post the vacancy, that there's always a sort of a ready stream of people. I think there's a word for it, that it reduces the sort of the downtime in terms of the financial turnover, right?
So if I could add a little bit more to that, this came up when we had a large apartment complex coming from in front of us, and it was presented to us, Commissioner Light and Commissioner Craig. You guys are, I know you were involved in
4 in the
cheering
morning.
us on until 4 in the morning. But what happened was we had many, many meetings with a developer, and he never told us about this. So it was 30-some unit or 30 unit, I'll just round up or down. And it had 7-bedroom units, it had 6-bedroom units, 5,
Catalina
4, 3, 2, 1, all the way.
Development.
Did it have names?
The Catalina development.
Yeah, the
Yes.
Catalina project.
Yeah, it started
And
off
what
at
happened was,
sevens.
from the very beginning, he knew it was one of these co-living situations. So people would literally would have gotten on an app, and they would have got into a bedroom with 7 other people they didn't know. The toilet paper would have been there. The paper towels would have already been supplied.
It's correct.
So it's really like a hotel or a dorm. But what was concerning was that it's not very residential. It's not very neighborly. These people were not going to be part of the neighborhood. They were going to come and go depending on work situation, right?
And didn't pay hotel taxes or anything.
No,
Right,
and
no
it was
TOT.
going to operate really like a hotel, but not
Extended stay
in.
hotel, yeah.
So it took us many, many meetings to realize that that was the business model that they had. And so that's why it needs to really be, our code is not strong enough, the writing, so that when you look through it, you're kind of going, gosh, I see how that might have gotten on there and slipped through.
I called him out on it and
Yeah.
specifically asked him, is this a co-living? He denied it
Yeah,
in that first
but-
meeting.
but I mean,
the second
literally,
meeting.
the first meeting, I am like, what is this? Who needs this, 1,500 square feet place with 8 bedrooms? I'm not getting the
Bedrooms.
picture. I'm not getting it.
And the
I just
smallest
don't-
room in the house is the living room.
Yeah, it was really bad. So I
just
think
wanna
that's a
add
great idea.
that there are cities that have put in adequate code.
Yeah, so
And
it's already
there's no
been
reason we
done.
shouldn't.
Okay.
Yeah, the work
So
has already
basically
been done.
co-living code.
So
Commissioner Boswell?
Okay.
question for Commissioner Lamb.
Yes.
Why does that house in your neighborhood turn over every 6 months? Is there some kind of they have to leave after 6 months? I'm not sure if I follow that.
No, because they're not required to have a 12-month lease, and it's not, as you know from the Catalina Village, we discussed this, there's not necessarily one person who takes on the lease. The rooms are leased
Individually. So there was
individually
100
based on their
and,
need, right? So,
So what you're talking about is in a period of 6 months, potentially everybody is now different.
Cycle.
Not that at the end of 6 months, they all move out and another group
no,
moves in.
they're all
Cycle.
different. It's
Cycle.
one bedroom at a
Yeah,
time.
cycle.
That sounded
Yeah.
really weird.
Yeah.
Okay, so I
Rotating
understand, yeah.
cast to
So,
care.
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm
so
sorry,
it's,
I didn't
it's a
clarify.
transient residential
Yeah,
situation.
Good word for it.
Commissioner Line, I can't remember off the top.
That does not lend itself well to this kind of
To
community.
neighbors, yeah.
And to a
neighborly
place
community
like
living.
where the Catalina project was, that has
Parking.
virtually no available street parking.
Mm-hmm.
And, we need to do something
There were
to
so
nip
many
this in the bud.
bedrooms. I don't have, I want to say like,
144.
yeah, 140 or
two.
yeah, one,
largely
and
just
so there were
bedrooms.
literally going to
It
be
was
122.
it was garage space and
individual
bedrooms.
leasing. Very strange.
Plus, there was no requirement that you'd only limit it to one person per bedroom.
Right.
That was another big thing. You could have
Okay.
had double that amount.
Right.
I think that's a great one. Does anybody else agree? Let's say A
Take a
or,
vote.
Yes.
yeah, yes?
Call for a vote.
Let's get that.
Okay,
in.
let's call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, that can go on there, Commissioner. Acting Director Scully.
2 for 2.
Okay, 2 for 2. What's
Right.
3, Sheila?
So the design guidelines, I don't know if it's appropriate to bring this to the strategic plan, but it is something that they have said that they, as
Yeah.
you mentioned earlier,
In the meetings.
right? This
City
is
council meeting.
the design guidelines, they've said that they
They have said it.
want to bring it back, but unless, I think this is a topic that easily could be pushed aside.
Okay, so here's the thing. I think that what happened was there were enough people that lived there were enough residents in Redondo that got involved and had some wishes, and it got included in our report that went to them, and then it was taken out. So I think out of respect for those, all of the citizens that did
good.
get involved in the design guidelines, because really what happened is, I mean, they wrote letters to us, they made phone calls to us, they did all of these things, and then they were just like scratched off. So because I've heard various council people say that they really want us to review those items again, nothing having to do with square footage bar or anything like that, but all of the other things we talked about. Okay.
And that's
Commissioner
fine.
Light, do you need a little bit more explanation of what it is?
That's clear.
Okay, we want to vote on that? Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
And that is for this one and the co-living, Director Scully. Do we need to discuss what should go in the comments?
I think on the co-living ordinance, my thought is, survey other cities, develop new standards, reflect best practices.
Beautiful.
Okay.
I
Okay.
like that. I like
Thank
that.
you.
Perfect.
So I think
That might just work for the.
on it's a little tricky, the objective residential standards, just in the sense that we would just, it would be refer back, refer back the items that were excluded that don't reduce development intensity and are inconsistent with state law.
Yes,
Yeah, something
exactly.
like that. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Does everybody
Sounds good.
agree on that? Let's vote on
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Yeah? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any noes? Okay, good, we got that one. You got it there. Anybody else have anything
How
they
hard
want
was
to add?
that? Good work.
Exhausted.
Okay, anybody, okay, then I have the one that I mentioned, and see if you guys, so basically this is a perfect time since we're all looking at our gutter and all this rainwater just running down literally over my sidewalk.
Recapture?
Yes, so rainwater harvesting. And there's, so basically what it does, it reduces the stormwater runoff from homes and businesses. Okay, so we know that, right?
Reduces or recaptures?
Well, you're probably not gonna be able to capture it all, but
Reduce
you're
by
trying to
not
capture as
running
much
off.
as you can.
So
But I
same
gotta tell you that the information that I found, listen to this. For every inch of rainfall, over 1,000 square foot of a roof will yield 623 gallons. So in this area, we average about 13 or 14 inches a year. So if you multiply 623, most houses have 1,000 square foot roof, I believe, Sean, you would think, even the smaller ones.
What was that now?
Most houses have 1,000 square foot
Oh, at
roof
least.
area,
Oh,
at
yeah.
least, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking minimal, like the small old beach homes would be capturing that much. And if we average 13 inches, El Nino, you're up above 20. Last year was 30 inches. So that's a lot of water. So I'm just going to go really quick. The obvious ones are like rain barrels. And that's really good for,
Irrigation of plants.
Mine are already
we can
full.
irrigate plants, we can, it's good. I mean, Santa Monica requires either rain barrels or they require a dip in the yard to catch water. I don't know what it's called.
Bioswale.
Swale or something like that. The other thing is that you could require in remodels and new build that piping goes into a tank. And that would collect all from all of the gutters that come down. I mean, I can't tell you, I must have let me just say 7. It's terrible, the amount of rainwater going right into the street off my house. I should
7 rain barrels?
fix that.
Isn't this one you mentioned before that you have to go into the street with it? Isn't that in the
They all,
code?
yes, they all go into the street.
That makes no sense.
It makes no sense. Now, that may have changed, Director?
What is,
Well, it depends on where you are. In our coastal zone, we have low impact development standards. So that's what you're referring to. And I might suggest expanding the boundaries of where we require low impact development, which is, capturing, you have to capture on site the first 3/4 inch of rainfall before, and it's kind of, there's a couple ways to look at it, but the goal with the low impact development is to clean the water before it runs off property and then into the storm drain system and into the ocean. So there's a couple ways to do it. You can retain it on site and percolate it, with a bioswale. That's that
Right.
principle. So
Right, bioswale,
so,
right.
yeah, so you calculate how much how much flow, cubic feet of water would be generated from the first 3/4 of an inch of rain on your property. And then you design the bioswale to be able to accommodate and retain that water. And then if there's more water, first it collects in the bioswale, and then it just, only the water off the top goes off the property.
Okay,
So-
and I want, the ones that I've seen, because Santa Monica, or was it Los Angeles, requires it on the new builds, you can't even tell because they're planted kind of like a wet pond, although most of the year it's dry. So it's just a lower area that
Yeah.
just has, you can't even tell that it's there.
Yeah.
It just dips down a little and it's got plants in it, so it's not ugly.
Under the
Last-
ground, it's got gravel, right? It's got.
Yeah, I don't know the exact, but I do know that it was a requirement.
They just announced, I don't know if it was the city or the county, I wasn't listening to it that closely. Either LA County or LA City managed to capture 500 billion gallons
Oh
of
my
rainwater
gosh,
last
I mean,
year.
really.
Which is
But you know what,
amazing.
it's just like the city of Redondo Beach just has to be thinking this way. We have to be a good
And they
community.
put
And
all
so-
that into the aquifer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that, then Commissioner Lamb has a wonderful example that she just did on her property. So if we could have a little quick thing on that one.
Sure.
Start from how it could have been and how it ended up, because that was so educational for me.
I'm not quite sure.
Well, you said that you could have gotten this very expensive pump.
Oh, yes. Okay, so in my area, right, the standard requirement, if my house was new, was that you are required, if you have a certain slope on your drive, right, you're required to pump it out to the street. Well, that didn't make sense to me, and it's not a new home, but I was having some drainage difficulty, and that was an option. My neighbor does it, pumps it out to the street. I decided that I would do I think it's a modified bioswale. I had a guy dig a trench in my backyard and put a drain. So all the water, because I'm on that, slope, all the water comes through, goes down the side and right into that bioswale. And then it percolates down into the watershed.
Which is so important.
And everybody's happy.
And it was going to cost, it would have cost you to get the pump.
I think it's to do a professional job where you have the pump underground and the pipe underground. It's a $40,000. That quoted me $40,000.
And then to do what she did was hardly anything. And she's putting water back into the water table. So the whole thing is just win-win. But either way, I'd love for the city council to have that on their, presented to
Yeah, and
them.
what was the title that you categorized?
Harvesting rainwater?
Oh, okay, so like, runoff capture.
Yeah.
Drainage retention, yeah.
Yeah, just,
Okay.
so it's not going into the street. I mean, literally,
term
it's
rainwater
over
harvesting.
my
Yeah.
curb. Okay, so
Retention.
should we take a vote on whether anybody, go ahead, Sheila.
I do have a question
I'm a
for
commissioner.
Director Scully, and that is, do you know where the watershed is?
Our watershed, well, I mean, there's a overall watershed, I don't know what it's returned, but it's, it's almost semi-regional. We're in the LA basin. So you've got, but if you go more local, you've got multiple watersheds that drain into into storm drain systems that have different outfalls ultimately.
Right.
So, each one of those, they are essentially small watersheds that drain a neighborhood or two.
There are
drains
two
it-
separate ones that flow into the power plant property, which was a natural lake, which was more saline, 14 feet higher and more saline than the ocean, because one of the watersheds came through a salt vein and the other one was fresh water, which was used for drinking water. So there were two watersheds going right just into the lake where the power plant was.
Right.
So there are multiple ones around.
So, Director Scully, would it be, so some of our neighborhoods are actually already being percolated, the water's already being percolated, and some aren't. Is that how I would understand that?
Yeah, it's, and there's also a threshold for depending on the amount or type of development, the low impact development standards kick in the coastal zone. Certain types of land uses trigger it, like automotive repair or gasoline station or restaurants. The reason is they generate, like a service station, obviously, that has, those, you don't want any of the petroleum,
Right.
to wash off site. So it all has to be 3/4 of an inch captured, treated, and then taken off site.
Okay.
They're not like retention. It really varies.
Where is, on Sapphire, where is all that water going to that I see run into the gutter?
It
To the
must be.
ocean, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
okay, so that's that's where we want to not get sidetracked. So all of the water that I see that goes into the main sewer system, that goes down into all along where we have our little drains on the beach.
Yes.
So that's where we need to address, that's what we need to address with water capture.
Yeah, we could reduce the amount of flow, one, by doing more on-site retention, like what
Right.
Sheila's doing.
Right.
And then at the same time, if everybody will be required to do the treatment, depending on what the development threshold is we want to measure it by. But let's say it goes to the single-family resident. I mean, that's a pretty, that's an additional cost that the property owner has to bear. But then if they're at least treating it, let's say they choose not to perk it, but treat it, all the water in the storm drain system, or a lot cleaner water, is going to get out into the ocean. And there's been the water quality has improved tremendously with LID, low impact development standards being applied, because the water's just, it used to just, you have to think about going in the ocean after a rainfall, and they recommend, you don't, but it's way cleaner water than it used to be. It's like our air quality. I was just, the standards
Oh,
now.
yeah.
When I was a kid, I used to run cross country.
Yeah, we know that.
Yeah, and it was like,
There's some days,
third stage smog alert. You
Yes, we
couldn't,
don't even use those
we'd
terms
still go
anymore.
running.
You're
You
at the
couldn't even
beach?
breathe.
Yeah.
Try doing it out in the San
I
Gabriel
was-
Valley.
I
Yeah.
was driving down from the Peninsula Center the other day, and I was just, you could see the Hollywood sign,
right?
and you could see like the hills.
Oh, I'm telling you, it's crazy.
like,
One other little
that-
bit of data, just so that we're just like terribly smart up here. In 1960, the whole point of this is that the water that we use on the indoors has already been addressed. So the toilets, the dishwashers, and the clothes washing machines have already been addressed. And in 1960, the inside of the house, with all of the appliances as was over 60 gallons used, right? In comparison to today, with the low flush toilets,
A day?
That's a day, I think. 60.
Yeah, a day. So compared to low flush toilets, dishwasher being changed, and clothes washer, we're down to 18 gallons. So the difference between 16 and 18, so the point is there's nothing else we can do on the inside of the house other than turn our water faucets off when we're showering, et cetera, and washing our teeth. But so that's why we have to go outside. How do we collect and save water on the outside? So
I
I
have a
thought that
question.
bit, yes.
Comment and a question.
Go ahead.
So at one point I looked at the Metropolitan Water, that's our service provider, is that correct?
Yeah, that's our water purveyor, yes.
Right. They take a certain percentage, I believe it's like 20% of the water for our drinking water, right? They take it from the aquifer, right? So the aquifer is not the aquifer, the water that we percolate, right? That goes down, right? Doesn't that go into these local aquifers or not? How does that work?
Well, I mean, I think there's a real small percentage, I want to say it's closer to like 2% that we get from,
2%.
that we get from local groundwater. So wells in Redondo Beach, or in close proximity. It's very small percentage, but, you know, there's recharging groundwater aquifers is a, you know, that, you know, as Colorado River water might get pulled away, you know, and you can't really count long-term on the water being available in far off places over time. And if we can improve the recharge efforts in our groundwater aquifers and our local water tables, that's, you know, that's kind of money in the bank, you know.
Right.
You know, and it's all our Northern Cal water, State Water Project water, you know, those things, you know, people, if we can begin to recycle, I mean, the purple pipe, that's something that, boy, if we could start using, because a lot of our water is, you know, watering our lawns and our yards. And, you know, if that water is tertiary water, you know, reclaimed water, that's recycled water, that's.
Like gray water kind of.
Yeah, that's just less water we need that then we can proportionally
Build more houses.
use from our local sources. That could go up.
Yeah.
So sustainability is really what we're talking about, you know?
Right.
Ability,
And
right.
I think we've got some policies, I'm sure we do. In our
Yes, we do.
land use element, we're really beefing that up.
Excellent.
I'm calling for a
excellent.
vote.
Why would anyone not want to do this?
I'm calling for a
Okay, so
vote.
did we vote on that one?
We have not yet voted on this.
Do we want to include it? Did we vote? All in favor, aye? Aye. Okay, so there it is. Anybody else have one? Anybody? Okay, so then do we have a motion?
job.
Do we need a motion to pass this on or not?
Not really, no.
No,
I mean,
it's just
because
a
you've acted
discussion.
on each one individually.
Okay.
So I think we're covered.
Okay, then, let's move on to M. Are there any items from staff?
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah. We're closed, and this is important to get out if anybody's listening. We're closed starting tomorrow until we'll be back in the office January 3rd. We do have, some opportunity for special inspections. There's a number on the City Hall building and, door 2 for planning, community development. For building inspections, you can call a number and we might be able to accommodate some inspections. And I know the chief and fire and all the public safety guys are still working. Public Works has a full crew, available. So, there certain things can never stop, but City Hall will actually be closed. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, any commission items and referral to staff? It sounds like we beat that one down a little bit tonight. Okay, motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn?
You have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We adjourn. Oh.